I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Welcome back to Homebrew Review, and this week we are taking a look at INV Plus, or if you prefer, Invaders Plus, for the Atari VCS, aka Atari 2600. This was the first attempt, at least as far as I know, and seemingly as far as history records, for an Atari version of Space Invaders to have the full 11 columns of invaders with 5 invaders per each column. Previous attempts had not been able to replicate this, and obviously some compromises were necessary. The invaders look like pixelated blocks as opposed to having their actual alien shapes, but this is still preferable to the official Atari release Space Invaders, which had much fewer columns of aliens and much less authentic gameplay compared to the original Space Invaders game. For example, the UFO behavior in this version is authentic in that if you're counting the number of shots you fired, you can actually control the value of the UFO from 50 to 100 to 150 to 300 points. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's there for those who have that knowledge of the authentic Space Invaders from the 1970s and can play it by memory that way. They can still play it that way with this version. The only other complaint, which would be a relatively minor complaint, other than the blocky appearance of the aliens, which was just necessary for keeping a version that would work in the limitations of the Atari 2600, is that the bases at the bottom feel a little small compared to the real versions. So my strategy of drilling a hole through a base to shoot up at a line of invaders isn't really practical here. I had to adjust ever so slightly to my gameplay. In other versions of Space Invaders where you can't drill up through the base and really shield yourself behind it while playing, I do a more bob and weave approach where I will try to clear a line and then move out of the way before they retaliate, and then move back, and then when they retaliate again, I move out of the way, and I kind of go back and forth that way. But other than that, the same gameplay strategies that I normally employ work with this version of Space Invaders, such as clearing the lines before they get to the edge of the screen so that it takes them longer to drop down a level when they come back the other direction. You want to clear out those lines to stop that marching invader army from reaching the bottom row way too fast. This version of Space Invaders was a joint collaboration of coding between Eric Mooney and Piero Cavina, and as of the recording of this video, it has been available in the AtariAge.com/store for many years and still is today. And I proudly own a copy of this cart that came in a very nice shell with a glossy label and a full-color instruction manual to boot. It also added some nice features for the Atari VCS home enthusiasts, such as the ability to set the refresh rate to PAL or NTSC, 50 or 60 hertz depending on the region that you live in. There's a 2-player co-op mode, so you can tag team it up with a friend, grab 2 joysticks, and both take on an alien wave together. There's an invisible invaders mode if you really want to challenge yourself by shooting at things that you can't see. And there's even an Easter egg hidden in the game, so they really pulled out all the stops when it came to creating this version of Space Invaders. And the fact they had to make some compromises to make it more authentic to the gameplay is what I would say most programmers did for home console adaptations of video games in the 1980s. Obviously, the first version of Space Invaders was the best they could do at the time with the knowledge they had, but fast forward 25 years later, this is the new limit of what they were capable of in recreating the authentic Space Invaders experience. Now, if it seems like I'm bashing the Atari version that came out for the VCS, I should clarify that that was a system seller in every respect. Space Invaders was a worldwide phenomenon. It was a huge arcade hit, and the Atari VCS was the first home edition of Space Invaders you could play. So even if it wasn't 100% authentic to the arcade, it presented a good enough facsimile that people bought Atari VCS consoles just to play Space Invaders at home. Many, many, many Atari 2600s were sold on the strength of this game. So I'm not knocking the Atari original Space Invaders. I'm just saying this is what it could have been if they knew what programmers know today back in the late 1970s and early 1980s. They could have made this. They just didn't have that way to trick and tweak out the Atari VCS that was gained over years of trial and error experience, decoding what the chips inside of it were capable of, pushing the video to the limits of what the Atari can render on the screen at a time. It required a lot of finesse, and that knowledge base had to build up over the decades, and it took a very dedicated and enthusiastic Atari homebrew scene with sites like AtariAge.com supporting it, encouraging it, and even providing physical releases when somebody created something good enough to share with the rest of the world. It was a labor of love for everyone involved, and the fruits of this labor are what I consider to be the most playable version of Space Invaders on Atari 2600. Just put aside the fact that the aliens don't look like aliens. Just play it like Space Invaders and it feels right. The speed of the aliens when you knock out more of them ramps up appropriately. The background sound, that endless march, it increases in tempo accordingly. The UFO behavior is right. The strategies that you will use to clear the alien waves, whether you sweep along underneath or you take them out one column at a time or you mix and match the two or you have a playstyle that I haven't even described yet, anything that you know how to do with Space Invaders will feel right when you're doing it with IMV+. And I would say not just to try this in emulation, because the ROM is freely available at AtariAge.com, so you can demo it to your heart's content. But I would say if you have an Atari 2600 and you only have the Space Invaders version that was released by Atari, spend $25, get this cartridge, put it in your Atari VCS or your Retron 77 or Sears Video Arcade, or in television with the Atari adapter, or ColecoVision with the Atari adapter. Whatever method you choose, you will get full joy out of IMV+. It is the kind of game you will lose yourself in for dozens and dozens of hours. It doesn't get tiresome easily. The gameplay is so true to Space Invaders that if you ever played the arcade game, what else can I say? It's for the Space Invaders fan. If you like Space Invaders, IMV+ is for you. I think that's the highest praise I can give it. It's such a good homebrew that you wish Atari had released it this way back in the day, and it would have been an even bigger hit for them than it already was. I'm Mr. MegaManFan, and as always, thank you for watching. I'm Mr. MegaManFan, welcome back to Homebrew Review, and today we are taking a look at Colony 7 for Atari 2600. Now, this was originally an arcade game that goes by the same name, Colony 7. This conversion was made by Manuel Ruscar. I am probably mispronouncing that, Manuel, and I am so sorry. He also did 2600 games such as Seawolf, Crazy Balloon, Starfire, and Gunfight. So he's quite an experienced programmer, and I think it shows in the quality of this introduction, complete with a very stylized Colony 7 graphic, background music, and a little chart that shows you the value of all of the different things that you're shooting down. And the gameplay is essentially a missile command type of format, except instead of destroying slowly descending missiles under your crosshairs. You're destroying fast-moving aliens that want to wipe out your colony. But the effect they have is the same. They are dropping bombs on the colonists below, and if you don't shoot them down, they're going to break through the barrier and kill everybody in sight. So you have to get them as soon as they appear on the screen as fast as you can, but you also have to manage which type of aliens you're shooting at, because if you miss one of those UFOs that goes across the top, it drops a bomb on you that's undestroyable and takes out one of your turrets. And if it takes out both turrets, you're defenseless and they break through your forces and you lose a life. You get 3 lives to start out with, and each wave that you survive, there are faster and more numerous amounts of aliens that you have to defend yourself against. It's a very simple but effective gameplay loop. Survive, clear the wave, save your colony, and then go on to deal with even more threats to said same, and get the highest score you can while the intensity keeps ramping up. I got steadily better at playing this as I went on, but I won't claim to be a Colony 7 expert. I will, however, note that this is a game that's available from the AtariAge store, so you can try a ROM of it, but you can also buy a physical cartridge and even get it complete in box if you want. The loose cartridge itself is $25. Let me try adding it to cart right now to see what it would cost if you want the box. Where is that option? Please choose your options. NTSC, PAL 60. It said there was a box option. Let me go back and reread what it says here. If you'd like a box copy, please select box upgrade yes at the top of the page before adding to cart. Box upgrade yes, add $15. Okay, so if you want it complete in box, it's $40, which seems very reasonable for a game of this quality. I think I will probably be making that purchase, but I just want to tell you that in the meantime, if you want to try it yourself, go to AtariAge.com, click on the Atari 2600 tab under Systems, go down to the search guide, type in Colony 7, and you can find a ROM. Just click on the Pac-Man logo, and it will download a zip file with both PAL and NTSC format. Use whatever emulator you want, Stella, OpenEMU, RetroArch, etc., and so on, and you can give this one a go for yourself. I think some people will be surprised at just how good Colony 7 is on such a primitive console, but programmers who really know their chops have found ways to trick out the 2600 and get every last pixel of play out of this system, despite the meager amount of processing power, video RAM, CPU cycles, all of that. It's really a testament to skill when it comes to a programmer putting together something like this. Was the original Colony 7 a success in the arcades? I'm sure that this homebrew version has done well for AtariAge because it's been available for quite a few years now. Let's see, how long has it been available? Colony 7, go back to this page again. Colony 7 has been on sale. 8K of RAM. Okay, it's not telling me that there. I'm going to go back. Colony 7. Self-published in 2007. So this game has been available for 14 years on Atari. In the arcade, It came out much earlier than 2007, of course. Taito released this one way back in 1981. The wiki page for it says it contains elements of both Space Invaders and Missile Command. I think that's actually a great description of it because I already made the comparison to Missile Command in terms of using the crosshairs to play the game, so accurate description is accurate. Thank you, Wikipedia. It's also claimed that this arcade game was the inspiration for the Magic release Atlantis on Atari 2600, and I could definitely see the similarities between the two, so I'll grant them that one as well. It doesn't say whether or not it was any kind of success in the arcade, though, just that it was released in 1981 and later included on the Taito Legends compilation. Let's see if it was available in both NTSC and if it was available in PAL. Where's Colony 7 on this list? 1981. It's not included on Taito Memories, a series of video game compilations in Japan. So apparently it's exclusive to Taito Legends. If you don't get it on Taito Legends on PS2, Xbox, or Windows, you can't get it. You can't get it separately for whatever reason. Well, Colony 7 is one of the highest quality homebrew Atari 2600 games I've played in a while. It definitely sucks you in and keeps you coming back for more, just because you're constantly moving the crosshairs around trying to catch up with all the things that are out to get you. And what's really fun, if you stop and think about this for a while, is that sprites, as we know them in video games, are almost, not completely, but almost non-existent on the 2600. You had like a ball and a couple of missiles and nothing that was like a full character on the screen. So you had to really be clever to not only program the enemies and the objects on the screen, but the hitboxes surrounding each one of them. So I know I say this a lot in these kind of videos, but it really is true. The programmers who make Atari 2600 homebrews, Atari VCS homebrews, really deserve recognition for the level of achievement that they have managed with a game like this. So do yourself a favor, try Colony 7, maybe even pick up a copy, a loose cartridge for $25 or a complete in box for $40 if you have a 2600 or anything compatible that plays 2600 games, whether it's the 5200 adapter, the ColecoVision adapter, one of those Retron devices. I believe they called the one that plays Atari 2600 the Retron 77 in honor of the year the Atari VCS first came out. And enjoy this game. You will find yourself getting invested in it as much as I did to have this much footage to show you and still want to keep playing it even after I'm done giving you the voiceover for this video, because I got to the 5th squad or 5th wave, whatever you want to call it, and now I want to see if I can get even further than that. There's no end, there's no point where you win. You just keep going as far as you can for as long as you can, and that for me is a vintage arcade game style. It's very much Space Invaders, Missile Command in those respects. Survive for as long as you can. The Intergalactic Peace Treaty of 2345 has been broken by a race known as the Gorn. You are on patrol in the Gamma sector of the Danibian cluster when you receive a distress call from Earth Outpost number 4. In space battle, you must defend the Earth Outpost from this deadly threat, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Before you can even face the enemy invaders, you have to safely land your ship on the planet's surface. This is your mission. This is your challenge. This is Space Battle from Dave Newman. So says AtariAge.com. And today we are looking at it on Homebrew Review, courtesy of Mr. MegaManFan. So if you like what we do on this channel, please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, share it with your friends. All of those things help the channel out. As you can see, my first attempt to land on the planet's surface was a failure, but you know the old saying, if at first you don't succeed, try again. If it wasn't obvious up to this point, this is an Atari 2600, or if you prefer Atari Video Computer System game, Atari VCS, the original console, not the brand new one that they made a couple of years ago, which is basically a souped up computer in a nice shell that resembles an old Atari console. That's not what I'm talking about. Maybe they've released it as a digital download for that modern iteration, but this is a cartridge available for the original Atari 2600 video computer system. You can buy it at AtariAge.com right now. As a matter of fact, I just checked, and it is still available. Although, like many of the games I've featured on Homebrew Review, you have a try before you buy option. You can go to the front page of AtariAge.com, click on 2600 on the left side, and type in Space Battle in the search bar. It will pull up a description of the game that you can click on, and a download ROM link is available there as well. So feel free to sample this one with the emulator of your choice. The Stella emulator, the OpenEMU emulator, RetroArch, or anything else that you use. You can sample this one first. And you might want to, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's a little bit on the challenging side. Not ridiculous to the point that I don't want to play it, but also not so easy that a newcomer would immediately think, wow, I want to plunk down my money for this. When you have to land on the planet's surface, the landing area is constantly moving, and it's very small. And if you don't land your ship exactly pixel for pixel on the pad, you blow up. You can't even be 1 millimeter off. You have to be dead on. So just getting to the point where you can shoot at these enemy waves is in itself quite the feat. Then there's the matter of your constantly depleting fuel supply, and I don't mean it goes down slowly over time. I mean it disappears quicker than a mother. You don't have any time to take out these aliens before you run out of fuel. If you don't wipe them out fast with perfectly timed shots, the Space Invaders kind of shots where you have to shoot where they aren't instead of where they are, you're going to run out of fuel. And guess what? You blow up when you run out of fuel. So 2 ways you can die already. You can die by not landing on the planet's surface. You can die by running out of fuel. And of course, they're shooting at you. They're attacking you. So you can die that way too. A lot of death in Space Battle. Get used to it when you start playing this game. It should be considered a timer. It's like the countdown timer on a level of Super Mario Brothers. When it runs out, you die. You want to finish before it runs out, or you're screwed. I have no other way to say it other than that. The only other thing I found I could do with my ship is activate a shield. But it's a very, very weird shield in that it juggles an enemy missile that's been dropped on you, and then you die anyway. So what even is the point of the shield? I am feeling rather dense when it comes to this, because it should allow you to destroy the incoming missile or bounce it off or do something that would help you. Instead, it just immobilizes it for a second or two and it plows into you anyways. But with those two things aside, it's still playable and it's still fun. It's just that you have to clear every wave as fast as you possibly can before death finds you. And the waves take 2 different forms. One is just aliens moving in a straight line in groups of 2 or 3 from left to right or right to left. And then there's these secondary wave enemies. I would call them the bosses, if such a thing is possible, because you go through 3 different stages. You go through landing on the planet's surface, you go through those alien waves, and then you get these bosses, and then you reset to having to land on the planet's surface again. These bosses take a lot of hits. Now, you do get the option to rapid fire shots. If you hit the button repeatedly, it takes the missile that you fired and fires it again. Although if it hasn't traveled all the way across the screen, you're just replacing it with a fresh missile, and you're not getting the old missile to continue traveling. It's like Gorf in that respect, where you could rapid fire, but each time you rapid fired, you were erasing the old shot that you had just fired. So keep that in mind. When the boss enemies are at close range, you can rapid fire them, but if they're way at the top of the screen and you shoot at them, then you shoot again, the first shot that you shoot is no longer going to be there, so you might miss entirely by trying to rapid fire. That's complicated, I know, but it's a mechanic that's very familiar to early arcade games, because I suspect they didn't have enough processing power to keep drawing multiple shots on the screen at one time, so if you fired another shot, you lost your first shot. Galaga, this is not. You cannot fire multiple shots at one time and take out multiple things moving towards you at one time, and then get rated on a percentage of shots that you landed when you finally get a game over. I don't think there's any such mechanic in Space Battle. It doesn't keep track, and you probably wouldn't want it to keep track, because, quite frankly, you're going to miss a lot. So all of these things factor into Space Battle and your consideration of whether or not to make a purchase of this game. It may seem like I've been a little harsh, but I actually still recommend it. It is fun to play. It's not very accessible in terms of the old platform that it's on and the limited number of people that might buy a game in a physical form for that platform. And it's also not very accessible in terms of the high degree of difficulty when it comes to mastering the game and getting a higher score than you did the previous time before. And there's certainly no goal other than getting a higher score. You don't have any end stage boss that you can reach. You don't have any game over cutscene that tells you completed the game. You've got to set your own goals and beat them. And if you're prepared for that, Space Battle may be for you. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Thanks for watching.